Hello, and for this video we're going to look at how to convert decimals to fractions. There's a couple different methods to do this, but for me the most foolproof method, in my opinion, is by taking our decimal and converting it and placing into a fraction with a power of 10 of something as the denominator and the numerator as whatever the decimal is. So the power of 10 is decided by how many powers of 10 it takes to make the decimal an integer, or a whole number if you like. So for instance, 10 to the power of 1, it's just 10, right? And then 10 to the power of 2, 100. So we want to times our decimal by one of these powers, or 10 to the power of 3,000, and so on. Decimals 0.00004, something like that. You're going to need 10 to the power of 5, for instance. So it's depending on the decimal. So for the first example, if we take 0.4 and we want to make this 0.4 an integer, so we want to make it a whole number. To do that, we have to multiply it by 10. So we need to do 0.4 times 10 to the power of 1, which is just 10, right? So it's going to be 4. Now, to make this decimal, we have to sort of rewrite this a little bit, and it's just a matter of rearranging this. So 0.4 is the same as 4 over 10. And if you rearrange this 0.4, you can sort of see that, because if you divide both sides by 10 to the power of 1, you get 0.4 is equal to 4 over 10, which is what we've got here. So we have our fraction. So we've gone from decimal to fraction. 0.4 is 4 over 10. Now, same as we always do with fractions, to get our final answer we have to simplify our fraction if we can. 4 over 10. So they both have a factor of 2. So 2 2's go into 4. So 2 over 5. This 2 goes into 10 5 times. That is our final answer. So 2 over 5 equals 0.4. That is our final answer for that example. Now, for another example, let's take a slightly harder decimal. So let's say we have 0.34. So again, to make the first thing we want to look is to make this an integer, make it a whole number. To make 0.34 a whole number, we can divide it by 10 squared, which is the same as 100. Just as a bit of a side note, when we multiply our decimal by 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, whatever it is, it's easier just to choose the lowest one. So for instance, with this 0.34, we could do 10 times, or 10 to the power of 3, it's 1,000. But it's just a bit overkill, it's not necessary, it just makes things more complicated for no reason. You still get to the correct answer in the end. But also, what you need to be aware of is you can't just do times it by 10 either, because if we do 0.34 times 10, we get 3.4, which is obviously not an integer, it's not a whole number. So that's why we need to use this one. So again, we could use this one, but it's too much. You get to the same answer, but it's just not necessary. Okay, so we know that 0.34, and we need to do times 100, because 0.34 times 100 is 34. So again, same thing as before. We now have our whole number 34 as the numerator. We know what our denominator is going to be. It's going to be 100, because that's what we have to times it by to get to the whole number. So 34 over 100 is 0.34. But again, with our fractions, we need to simplify it if we can. And so 34 over 100, again, the easiest one to do. They're both even numbers, so they have factors of 2, which means half it. So 17, half of 34 is 17, so 17 2's going to 34, and 52 is going to 100. And we can't simplify this any further, because 17 and 50 don't share common factor. So our final answer in its simplest form is 17 over 50 is 0.34. And as for our final example, we'll do a 2 decimal place decimal again. So let's take 0.95. So again, like the one before, we're going to times this by 100 to get 95, or 10 squared. And that is the lowest amount of factors to times 10 by to get to an integer. So again, we could times it by 1000 to get 950, and then you do 950 over 1000, but again, that's just too many steps. You can do that, you'll get to the same answer, but you're just making it harder for yourself. So we'll take our integer, our whole number, so 95 is our numerator, and our denominator is 100, because that's what we have to times it by to get to the numerator, to get to the whole number. It's 95 over 100. Again, simplify it if you can. And I know to do this straight away, 5's going to both of them, and just doing some mental maths in my head, I know 5 goes into 95 19 times, and into 100 20 times. And can we simplify that any further? No, we can't. So our final answer, our simplest answer, is 19 over 20 is 0.95. So yeah, and that's it. Hopefully that all makes a bit of sense. If you were to practice this by yourself, what I'd say to do is just make up some decimals. So let's say, I don't know, 0.215. Let's turn that into a fraction. You know, that would be your first question you'd set yourself. Then do another one. 0.111 maybe. Make that into a fraction. Just give it some practice, and then when you think you've got the final answer, use your calculator or go online and look up 0.215 as a fraction simplest form. You'll use your calculator, and that's probably the best way to practice. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Hopefully it makes some sense. Thanks for watching. Cheers.